Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Women Talking Money podcast. My name is Gretchen from Magenta Financial Planning, and today I'm joined by Nicky Sevel. Nicky. Her name is Nicky. She loves data analytics and problem solving and is the co-founder of Woven Advice, a company offering advice technology to help transform the tech landscape for IFAs and wealth managers using data and NI. Nicky loves a challenge and anything that involves wealth and tech and describes herself as a strategically focused fintech professional. She's also passionate about bridging the female financial literacy and education gap. So she's perfect for this podcast. So welcome, Nicky, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Sorry about my slip up on your name. I'm not going to redo this. We just all make mistakes. So that's where I'm at.
I've been called worse, Gretchen.
So do you want to just expand on that a bit and tell us a bit more about yourself and your journey to Woven Advice and what you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So I am, as you'll hear from my accent, I'm originally from Australia, from Perth, the most isolated city in the world, where I grew up and one might say escaped about 12 years ago to the big smoke of London. Like a lot of typical Australian mid-20-year-olds, I was looking for excitement, looking for, new career opportunities. More than anything, I was looking to apply my background and history and studies in finance and investments, and wealth management specifically, and looking to apply it to a bit bigger world focus than we have in small Perth back in Oz. And so when I moved over here, I was looking for something exciting that I could learn and expand my knowledge, but somehow stumbled into the tech space. And what better tech space to be in than working and developing technology for the industry I'd just been in wealth management. And I found, I actually completely found my calling in technology for financial advisors and wealth managers. And, I consider myself lucky to have stumbled across something like that. 12 years later, I am, proud to say I'm the founder of a technology startup. There's been ups and downs, money, learnings, immigration, absolutely everything over those 12 years. But, I don't regret a thing.
And so now, Woven Advice is fully launched, fully sort of working and everything all through the process and helping lots of IFAs do better.
That might as well be a tagline there, helping IFAs do better. Absolutely. We're data focused, and I'm, sure we'll get into that about different, thinking about money and data, and there's a lot of overlaps there. But, for all financial advisors, at the end of the day, you're running a business, you're running a service to people and helping them with their own money. And to run a business, you need good technology and you need good data. And that's what we're passionate about doing and providing.
Excellent. So the podcast is about just being open about money. We dealing with money. You're also in that space with, the fintech that you're, getting involved in and stuff, but we don't often necessarily open up and talk about, nitty gritty and talk about money and maybe our journey. So I really appreciate you joining us to kind of chat more about that. I always start with everyone's sort of early money memories, but I guess I want to know today, like, what's your earliest memory of money? And then also, how do you think it shaped your views, today, or at least, through your journey?
Yeah, it's, thinking back about my earliest memories, it's hard to remember which ones were the earliest ones. But I think, one that sticks with me is my age bracket in Perth, specifically in Oz. We were born on the bicentenary of Australia being invaded, or whatever one might want to say. And so the government decided to give every child that was born that year $50 and a bank account. And there was then, a certain time in most of my age group's childhood where we got to the point where our parents helped us get that money out of said bank account and opened up something real, something we could use for the future. I unfortunately don't know how much that $50 was worth at the time that it came out, but I reckon it was about 7 or 8. I got taken in to open up a bank account with the ANZ Bank and came home with what I thought was like a checkbook and felt like a bit like an adult, like my mum has. But realistically, it was probably like a deposit slip book or something like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was probably the earliest memory. I wouldn't say it was defining in any way, but I can tell you some more of those if you prefer.
I guess so. It is a memorable thing, isn't it? Going to the bank for the first time, maybe having your own account and having that kind of sense of a little bit of independence, no matter what that was. Like that feels good.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, there's so many people. It's amazing how many people you speak to now that will say, "Oh, I still have my first bank account that I ever had." I don't. They closed mine a long time ago. It was empty for too long. But like, I can understand that desire to keep that and almost hang on to that nostalgia. You've got that full journey, really.
Yeah. And so, are there any other memories that you think maybe then, even if it was later on, you can look back and think, yeah, that was important in this journey that I'm on and I still am on, that shaped the way you think about things now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like I quite often having a background in financial planning and understanding financial concepts, but probably not following them a lot myself. I always question where a lot of my behaviours came from. And if I look back, I would have always thought when I was young I had quite a comfortable upbringing. But when I kind of dissect it, I look at all of the challenges that my parents had. Both my dad and my stepdad were in and out of employment through good times and bad times. My mum as well, and I do now remember this, but I think that my parents made such a big effort to protect myself and my brother from those challenges. And do you know what the impact that had? It's probably made me not respect money as much as a lot of people did. And it's funny how that kind of falls, because you'd almost think I'd consider it more, but they did such a good job of, never worrying my brother and I about, any financial difficulties, which probably led to a lot of we probably get into it, but risk-taking attitudes when it comes to money and doing different things. So that was, I think that's quite defining. And I do remember I must have been about 14 or 15, and I knew there were money troubles in the family. And I came across a bank statement on the kitchen counter, and I saw the number, and it said it was 6 digits. And I just kind of approached my mum and I said, "Mum, you're always talking about money troubles, but this number's like really big. Like, how, are we actually in trouble?" And then she explained the difference between the CR and the DR, in that, it wasn't it wasn't a positive balance, and actually it was also the mortgage account, things like that. And from then on, I became a lot more curious about money, curious about concepts. I didn't really want to be ignorant like that. And from then on, in high school, I took on economics. I enjoyed, I think when I was about 15, we did a share trading game in class. Absolutely loved that. Happy to say I didn't get into gambling as a result of it, but I really, really enjoyed it, found it really interesting. And that led to me ultimately taking on learning about studying finance and investments when I got to university and pursuing the career I did.
That's really interesting, isn't it? That like maybe there was a trigger point where you thought, I need to understand more, and then that led to all of that.
Absolutely.
It's interesting about the game thing, okay? Because I mean, there are several games out there, aren't there? That I know the CII and various other professional bodies want to like try and get out there. And I'll mention this person because I know that my brother through fintech and stuff like that. But when we grew up, we used to play the game of life.
Yeah.
And he always used to thrash me because he would always take the gamble. He would like maybe not go to university, or he wouldn't do the church or whatever. He might go to university, but then he'd like gamble, or he wouldn't, he'd always take out insurance, but he would always do the stock market gamble or whatever that you do along the journey. And then it would just like, I don't know, his choices were always like, he clearly understood a little bit more at that point of like the logic of it than me and my sister did. We were just playing a game. Didn't really kind of associate it with things that like were actually going to happen in life necessarily, apart from having, you put pegs in because you got children and stuff. But so I think it's mad how those kind of things, like you saying, you can remember that share thing that you were doing at school, like maybe how some people get it, that like understand that that's like a concept that's going to actually happen in life. And I really don't think at that point in my life when I was 14, I just didn't,
Absolutely not. I think Monopoly is another one that's a bit like that. I've never managed to make it to do any good, but some people just click really young, and just get it, and I guess it reflects in a lot of their other decisions in life and behaviors as well.
Yeah, and there's the American one is Payday.
Mm.
That one's really interesting as well, because there's lots of like debt management in there and like promissory notes and borrowing and stuff like that. So I think there's loads of stuff that like you could learn from these games.
Yeah,
You
what
kind of,
age do they recommend that one from?
but yeah, really interesting that that sort of came up in your kind of
Mm.
memory of like what was going on at school and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think that there's a specific person or event that's influenced you and your relationship with money, other than, I mean, obviously you've already said about your parents maybe sheltering you from some of those things that were going on?
Yeah, I think again, both my dad and my stepdad were quite, I guess, took a lot of chances in business as well, as they started different ventures, and some went well, some didn't go well, some went terribly. And I think that probably is a big influence from me, because, you know, they're doing great. They're doing great now. And it kind of, I guess, puts some things into perspective around, you know, what type of chances that I want to take in my own career and my own life. You know, a bit of what's the worst that can happen around different decisions. And I think I've always taken that type of mentality into my decision making. And I kind of say to a lot of people that I'm quite risk averse, and they just look at me and they go, "Really, Nikki?" Yeah, I've got a very high risk tolerance. And I think, well, but to me, it's a calculated risk. And I sit there and I go, you know, what am I willing to give up to achieve XYZ, and what am I likely to be giving up? You know, what's the worst case scenario? And that is generally how I make most of my decisions. And yeah, I guess that's from seeing a lot of, you know, ventures start and some fail, and life goes on. And, you know, as long as you've got, I guess, an attitude where you can continue and try something new and keep going, then you'll hopefully be okay.
Do you think that that's just because you sort of saw them do it and have seen them, you know, some things fail and some things succeed? Or do you remember, you know, do you remember having conversations around, oh, well, you know, you know, I'm setting up a new company, or because one conversation I had with someone was just about how that influence of like that entrepreneurial spirit can kind of
Mm.
filter down almost through the dinner table, you know, in general conversation, when if you grew up in a household that are generally employed and in that kind of more stable pay packet, it's just slightly different. So I wondered whether that, do you feel that's influenced you?
I think so for me, but you know, when I have my brother and I talk about this all the time, and he's completely different to me in that sense. And we kind of look at each other's lives and are a bit envious about various aspects of. I don't think I could. I've never really lasted super long in an employed job, because it doesn't meet some of my requirements for, or aspirational requirements. Whereas, you know, he's incredibly successful in what he does, and he's achieved everything he's ever set his mind to. So yes and no, I guess. I don't think, you know, to the first question, I don't think I ever sat there in a conversation with my family and said, you know, do you think I should do this? I usually would tell them after the fact, you know, at that point that I've made up my mind. I know exactly what I'm going to do. And that's it. I'm starting up a business. I'm doing XYZ. And they, you know, they all go, "That's great. Good luck. You know, let me know, if I can help." But I think I've always had probably a massive streak of independence in that. I do, you know, I have to make that decision on my own, and it's my own, I guess, opinion that's going to be most important. But equally, I'm interested in yourself and your siblings, because of course your brother's also entrepreneurial. You're entrepreneurial. Is your sister as well?
I mean, she does work for herself. She runs
Look
their
at
own. So yeah, she is entrepreneurial. Everyone's doing something slightly different
that.
and in different ways. But yes, and weirdly, didn't ever, you know, my parents didn't do that. They were in an employed role, and you know, and steady, stable career. But my father has always said that if the opportunity, like if he was living it now, you know, in the kind of world that we are in now, and kind of digital age and availability of things and flexibility of things, that things would be very different. And when he was in his 30s, 40s, when he had to really knuckle down and, you know, he was having children and mortgages and all of those kind of things, I think that he decided that was the route, that it, you know, that was the way that you went in the, you know, in the 80s. Like that was kind of where 70s, 80s, that was where you're at. So I think if he had it all over again, he'd probably be doing it differently. But yes, we've all ended up doing that, and my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law at one point. So it's all kind of like, yeah.
Do you find it's quite easy? It's a lot easier having the support. You're going through similar experiences, although completely different at the same time. But you can give each other that small business support, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And I think especially, like I'm sure you find, it's really important to have peers to speak to when you're running business and you're thinking about money and thinking about things that can go wrong with business and when you've got challenges. And I think, the longer you do it, the more experience you have of it and the more you can share with that. And although I would say, yeah, everyone's so different. And I always go to my brother if I know I need like the straight answer. Like if I
Yeah,
just need him to tell me, like, you should definitely do this.
yeah,
But then if I want to talk about it in a bit more of an emotional way, I might go to my sister.
yeah.
So yeah, everyone, it's amazing, isn't it? How you're saying about your brother, being brought up in the same household, but how you can, I think whether you're employed or self-employed, like have completely different ways about going about things and what it is that kind of, makes you tick and the aspirations that you have can be so different.
Yeah, there's also the aspect that like we've got long careers, behind us and ahead of us, and I guess a lot of people find that journey at a different point in their lives as well. Like it did take me quite a while of trying to fit into the corporate mold before I realized that actually being an entrepreneur was what was going to work best for me. So I guess
And I
there's
don't know that I wanted that either. I think
Mm,
an opportunity came and I remember having the conversation with with my brother and him
mm,
going, what have you got to lose?
yeah, yeah,
Like
exactly.
weigh up what you've got to lose. You've still got your qualifications. You've still got this. And, are you you should just go for it. And I think you do need people who kind of just lay it out and go, just go and why not?
Yeah.
But the risk thing is big. And it's really interesting that you and I are having this conversation because risk taking and appetite for women and men, is slightly, I'm just going to say typically,
Mm.
generally is quite different, and I know that that's why, my brother does feel differently about that to like how my sister and I would approach it. And clients repeatedly I see who are in that and taking gamble or taking the risk and calculating that risk, I do think is almost like not as natural maybe for women as it seems to be for generally for men.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's so much behind that, just so many, decades of, I guess, traditional attitudes to money and everything as well. And that's probably another aspect of it is I was, very financially interested from quite a young age, which perhaps makes it easier for me to calculate my risks. Or both of us having, education and degrees in the area makes it, understanding cash flow is just second nature essentially. And I think that also plays a big difference whether or not it's gender. But I think typically you're right.
Absolutely. A knowledge and understanding of that. And absolutely. And kind of also one of the things that's come up on this and, it'd be interesting to see what you think about is that I'm always talking to people about debt. And we've got constantly this kind of like thing that debt is bad and that people want to be debt free. And I think that's a very aspirational place to want to be. I definitely want to be there. Everyone wants to
Mm.
be there, but that we're driven like so much towards that. And actually along the journey, I have had to make decisions which were uncomfortable. And I think you do have to, again, a calculated risk to maybe move yourself forward. And that might include, stepping out of your comfort zone in regards to money, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think every day I'm still learning those challenges, both from the debt side of things. I feel, my opinions do change daily on that and how I feel about it. And then also on taking risks and taking risks on the business front, because, in especially in tech startups, if I don't take risks, like we don't get to move forward.
Mm.
And I guess, back to that gender conversation as well, there's such a small percentage of women that start up tech companies, probably because it's really risky and it's quite difficult to do if you're trying, if you've got family and mouths to feed. And like, it doesn't come supernatural to, throw all your eggs in one basket. And,
And you're like in a double whammy then as well, because you're in a fintech world that's mainly male driven
mm,
and you're also in a wealth management world that's also male heavy. So that's quite an interesting dynamic there.
Yeah, it is. And I would say that I went from one terrible industry for diversity to an even worse one. It is, I would say, much harder in the tech space. And so it is nice that, all my customers and everyone I speak to and work with on a day-to-day basis are in the financial services industry, because I can see that progress from, vaguely sitting on the outside and then comparing it to the tech industry that doesn't generally seem to move forward as fast. It doesn't have as much, I guess, effort or thought or investment into the space, sadly.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. Absolute double whammy when it comes to diversity.
Oh dear. So if you were to describe your current relationship with money in one word for me, Nicky, what do you think it would be?
This is a bit cliche, but data.
Okay.
It's just data to me. It's another data point. Another thing I measure on a day-to-day basis. So I try to measure it less than daily. I probably measure my weight more, and that's just another data point. Look at how much I'm running, how much I weigh, how much I eat, how much money is in my bank account, how many invoices I have to pay on any given day. Like it is another data point to track. And I'm quite happy with that relationship and feeling about it. I think I've gone through times in my life where I've been checking my bank account every day, and that's probably about as healthy as checking your weight every day.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So what you're saying there is that it's just another thing along with a multitude of other things that you've got to keep an eye on and measure and keep on track and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I learned quite a long time ago that money wasn't a metric for success for me. I had a job where I managed to negotiate, almost double my salary and pay rise, and worked out 6 months later I wasn't any happier, and that was a real kind of eye opener for me. That just money is a means to an end, and it's about what those goals are. What is it that you need that money for? And if there's something that you're striving for that needs money, then that's maybe a driver. To me, it's a metric, it's a data point that you're tracking to try and get there. Some people have shorter term goals with money, some people have longer term goals with money. I find my goals are not really so much money oriented in the end. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I work for myself and I do my own business, because I get so much satisfaction from just, doing my job. It's not the money that, I won't say comes in, but will potentially come in by working at a startup.
So yeah, that's really interesting. So it feels like there was a very specific point where you went, okay, my goals probably are not so much money driven anymore then.
Yeah, exactly. I've had a few like almost restarts with money, like moments, where I've reached a specific goal, let's say like paying off my student debts. I made a really big push to do that, and at the point I did it, I then had no money at the end of it, but I still had a job, so I was able to then start saving again. Similarly with a house, it was a big push to get there, and then you've kind of got there and you've got mortgage, and now my baseline is enough money to pay the mortgage every month, and actually everything else I put into the business, because I don't have many wants outside of that. But other times, I had a real challenge one year with immigration and my visa. It was actually just after I'd bought my flat, and I was incredibly stressed because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to have that income to be able to pay my flat, let alone stay in the country. Like a lot of things on the Maslow hierarchy of needs were under threat at that point. And so, things went really up, really down, and that's happened a number of times in my life. And I think you come out at the other side, and it helps you reshape that relationship with money, and it changes over time too.
Yeah, and build resilience as well. Like every time you've been through one of those things, every time you've got that anxiety, but you get through it, you feel like you're better equipped.
Yeah, to take more risks. That's what happens, isn't it? That's how it starts.
Yeah. And so with Woven Advice, like how do you have like specific financial, like you're saying you're not motivated necessarily by financial goals, but obviously the business is linked to financial goals. So, and they are not just, I was going to say you and it are the same, but you're not. But, it's intrinsically linked, right? So if you're putting any extra money into the business and the business has to hit business financial metrics, then it is still linked, isn't it? There are still financial goalposts and everything.
Fundamentally, I don't think you could do what we're doing as a startup business if you didn't fundamentally believe in the success of it. And it's the success of it that is linked to monetary outcome, particularly for investors. But for me, I didn't just decide one day I wanted to solve this problem for financial advisors. It was something I'd lived and breathed with, helping financial advisors with their data and seeing how that impacts the way they manage their businesses, their own profit margins, and how that impacts the experience that their customers are having day to day and what their outcomes are. And I think, one of the things we do is we manage data, and we manage big data, and we can see what's going on, and how many clients there are out there that might not be getting the service that they want or that the advisors would want to give them, because technology is so challenging. And as a small business, as a financial advisor, as an independent financial advisor, if you're running your own business, you don't have the massive corporate resources that, Morgan Stanley in the States have, where they brought in AI a long time before anyone was talking about AI. And so for the amazing work that IFAs do with their clients, I feel like the more help we can get them, the better outcome for everyone. And ultimately, it comes down to reducing that cost of advice. If financial advisors are able to produce financial advice more efficiently and more cost effectively, they'll be able to pass on those savings to the customers. They'll be able to service more customers, more people in the country
get access to advice,
get access to financial advice, and that's it. And the trickle on is huge. And we all play our part. And my thing happens to be tech and data, and so I want to make the impact I can.
So talking a little bit about, you talked about a few big things there, saving to pay off student debt, saving for your flat, things like that. We all know that those key goals, we've all got set things that we want to try and achieve, or capital events that we need to get to so that we can kind of free ourselves of debt, etc. But how do you find, given the nature of entrepreneurial self-employment, etc., you approach that balance between, thinking about saving, thinking about future stuff versus enjoying today? Because it's all, that's what everyone's talking about. How do I get the balance? What do I do? How does that work?
Yeah. Okay. So how do I make sure I have the monetary?
Yeah. How do you balance living for, like, saving for the future versus living for today?
There's not much saving for the future, which will hurt for a financial planning professional. And when even my friends are asking me for whatever suggestions and advice, I say, well, okay, do as I say, not as I do. So yeah, I think for me, but having said that, if what we're trying to do at Woven Advice is successful, that there's a great outcome for that could be financial for me to make me enjoy my retirement, or if that
you're building an asset, you're investing in an asset
in the way I can, and it's not by saving in my bank account. Exactly. So I think it's about taking, as I say, everything I do on a day-to-day basis I absolutely love. Like I wouldn't have to do it any other way, or maybe don't ask me that on a bad day, because startups are a roller coaster ride. But I actually genuinely can look at anything I'm doing in day to day and go, like, I'm really happy I'm doing this. I think if there was any, if I was right now in this moment more financially stable and had lots of money and I could change anything, I'd probably just remove the tasks I don't like doing. Let's say, like, commuting. Hate commuting. I'm really terrible at scheduling emails, so I'd probably get myself a virtual assistant. And those are maybe some ways that financially I could improve the now. But again, that's a daily choice of where's the best place to spend money or save money, managing cash flow at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've kind of talked a little bit about this. Well, not really, because you just said about, building an asset for the future, etc. But my next question is about financial freedom. And so what financial freedom means to you and how you are working towards what that might look like.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We kind of spoke about it, because I feel financially free, I guess, which is crazy to think, because I do still have a mortgage, and I do have to worry about what I spend on a day-to-day basis. But the fact that I get to do what I love doing means I guess I feel free. And I guess that comes from a accumulation of decisions over the years that's allowed me to do this. And I could imagine a situation where I wasn't able to do this. If things had happened differently, I would have needed to be in a corporate role. Or, I look back at what are my contingency plans? What happens if something doesn't go so well with Woven? I all of a sudden do need to put my day-to-day finances at the top priority and do something. And one does make those plans, and that's the situation where I feel like maybe then I definitely wouldn't be financially free. But today I feel okay. Probably different to the traditional answer to that question, I imagine.
That's no right or wrong, as you know, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
So if you could give your younger self one piece of financial advice, what do you think it would be?
I think I would have suggested I consider an entrepreneurial route sooner. I think it took me a little bit too long to work out my place. Having said that, I definitely don't regret anything, because I might not have been in a position to do it, or I wouldn't be where I am today. So I'm very happy with my journey, but it probably would have been about exploring technology sooner, exploring, being able to put some creativity into the difficult concepts, which is, I guess, where technology comes from, problem solving, and to start to think outside that box earlier in life. I think it probably took me a little bit too long to get there.
Do you think that because you went down, like you talked about doing like the economics route and then went into doing your degree and things like that, do you think that there are things maybe in that journey that they also, I mean, and they might do it now. We're talking about, I was at uni like 20 years ago. So yeah, 25 years ago. So they would do things differently now than they did when I was at university or at school. I felt, there was an awful lot of like traditional kind of like traditional routes, employed roles kind of. So do you think that maybe if the younger Nicky had been encouraged more by the people that were teaching her about what was out there, then that could have been a way of doing it as well?
Absolutely. It's a good point. I've been fortunate enough to work with some phenomenal interns over the last probably 5 years, and they have always been, self-starting uni students who have reached out or taken on a degree that is specifically focused on the business management, and have gone, oh, can I help you out? Sometimes it's been paid, sometimes it hasn't been paid. And they have been almost inspirational back to me to think like, I wish I was like that at that age. So yes, maybe hopefully the universities do something a bit different, or perhaps I wasn't, my university or my degree wasn't quite right to set me down that path, or maybe I was also just not really on it at that age.
Probably like now in the digital world that we're in, the kind of opportunity potentially of entrepreneurship and things is kind of a bit more clear, like, and you could just see it on your phone rather than anyone telling, you can just see it, can't you? Sort of the world is opened up in a way that we didn't have really, or I certainly didn't have.
That's very true. Yeah, definitely same on my side. But then having said that,
I might have ignored it anyway.
Yeah, I wonder, I was in Perth, the most isolated city in the world. Maybe news didn't make it.
Yeah. And I was in the backwaters of Wiltshire. So, what do you expect? Okay. So just as we wrap up then a little bit, Nicky, what's one thing you'd want every woman to know or think differently about when it comes to money?
I would like to, any woman that's ever felt trapped by money, or felt like they're held back by it, or held back by the thought of not having enough or not being able to do something, I would, wish that every woman can go and speak to someone, or feel confident to at least ask for some help if they feel trapped in that scenario, because there is, so many different ways that you could even just be looking at money differently, or sometimes you always just need someone else to have a look at your situation and help. And I know far too many women that, they rely on perhaps just their partner to talk money about, or don't even talk money about that. And so, I wish all women would feel confident to have an open dialogue about money.
Yeah, open up the conversation, have these conversations, and
Exactly.
yeah, find things that, like, even if it's, someone that you don't normally talk to about these things. You and I have not talked about these things, and today we've like found various different things that we've got, that we can resonate about. So that's what's important, isn't it?
I want to come over and play Game of Life. See how
not
we
with
all
Oliver.
are at it nowadays.
Not with Oliver. No,
Yeah,
no.
no.
I will not be doing that. Anyway, I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about money. It's been great.
Me too. Thank you so much for inviting me on.